My name is Lillian. I'm 56 years old, and I never thought I'd get a call like this while lying in a hospital bed at 2 in the morning. My daughter Amanda's voice was breathless with excitement. Mum, I'm getting married. The apartment and car are sold. Goodbye. Despite my surgical pain, I smiled and replied calmly, Okay, but you forgot one thing. There was a pause before she asked, What do you mean? I couldn't help but laugh out loud, because the apartment and car she'd just sold were legally mine. Before I tell you how this shocking betrayal unfolded and what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and tell me in the comments if you've ever had someone try to sell something that didn't belong to them. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this story ends. I've always believed that being a mother was the greatest blessing of my life. When Amanda was born 29 years ago, I felt a love I never knew was possible. Her father Michael and I had been high school sweethearts who married young. We weren't rich, but we were happy in our modest starter home building a life together. Then everything changed when Amanda was 3 years old, and Michael died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. One day he was playing with our daughter in the backyard, and the next day I was planning his funeral. The grief was overwhelming, but I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had a toddler who needed me bills to pay and a future to rebuild. I threw myself into my real estate career, working longer hours than I ever thought possible. I still remember bringing Amanda to open houses when my babysitter cancelled setting her up with colouring books in empty bedrooms while I charmed potential buyers. Those early years were a blur of exhaustion and determination. Mummy, when is Daddy coming home? Amanda would ask in those first months. Each time I'd have to swallow the lump in my throat and explain again that Daddy couldn't come back. Eventually the questions stopped, but the weight of being both parents never eased. As Amanda grew, I made sure she never felt the financial strain we were under. I worked holidays and weekends to afford dance lessons, summer camps, and later college tuition. My own mother had criticized me for spoiling Amanda, but I saw it differently. I wanted her to have everything I didn't have growing up, to never feel the lack I had felt. Perhaps my mother had been right after all. Our relationship had always been close, almost more like sisters than mother and daughter, as she entered adulthood. We had Sunday brunches together, texted daily, and even vacationed together. Amanda would often say, "Mum, you're my best friend," words that warmed my heart, even as I sometimes worried whether I had maintained enough parental authority. When Amanda graduated college and struggled to find a job in her chosen field of marketing, I offered to help. I had done well in real estate over the years, especially after specializing in luxury properties in our growing city. I purchased a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice area as an investment property and let Amanda live there rent-free while she found her footing. The arrangement was clear: it remained my property, but she could live there until she was financially stable. The same went for the car, a practical but nice SUV that I bought and maintained while she used it. I never imagined those generous gestures would lead to the situation I now found myself in. Everything changed when Amanda met Jason Thompson about a year ago. She was instantly smitten with this charismatic man, who was 3 years her senior and claimed to run a successful investment business. I still remember the night she brought him to dinner at my house. Something about his too wide smile and the way his eyes assessed the value of everything in my home made me uneasy. "Your mother has quite a beautiful place here," he commented to Amanda, though his eyes were fixed on my antique grandfather clock. "Mom has worked really hard," Amanda replied proudly. "She built her real estate business from nothing." "Impressive," Jason said, finally looking at me. "You must have quite the portfolio by now." The questions that followed all centered around my assets, investments, and properties. When I deflected, mentioning his business instead, his answers were vague and quickly redirected. I tried to share my concerns with Amanda the next day, but she immediately became defensive. "You always do this, Mum," she accused. "You never think anyone is good enough for me." "That's not true," I protested. "I just think we don't know much about him yet." "I know everything I need to know," she insisted, ending the conversation. Over the following months, I watched with growing concern as Amanda changed. My independent, career-focused daughter started cancelling our brunches. Her ambitions to advance in her marketing job faded as she took more sick days to accompany Jason on his mysterious business trips. Her close friends stopped coming around. Even her appearance transformed suddenly. She was wearing expensive clothes and jewelry that I knew she couldn't afford on her entry-level salary. When I gently asked about these changes, her answers became increasingly secretive. "Jason takes care of me," she would say, or "we have investment opportunities you wouldn't understand." The real red flag came 3 months ago when Amanda mentioned they were considering moving abroad. "Jason has connections in Dubai. We could make millions there." "What about your job, your friends, your life here?" I asked, alarmed. "Sometimes you have to take risks for a bigger future, Mom. You wouldn't understand because you've played it safe your whole life." Her words stung. There had been nothing safe about raising a child alone while building a business. But I swallowed my hurt and simply said I hoped she would think carefully before making such a big decision. 2 weeks before the midnight call, I was rushed to the hospital with severe abdominal pain. The diagnosis was an infected gallbladder that required immediate surgery. I called Amanda from the emergency room, but the call went to voicemail. She texted back hours later. "Sorry at an event with Jason. Hope you feel better soon." I was hurt by her dismissive response, but too focused on my health crisis to address it. The surgery went well, but recovery was painful and slower than expected due to a minor infection. My friends visited regularly, bringing food and keeping me company. Amanda came once for less than 20 minutes, distracted by her phone the entire time. "I really need you right now, Amanda." I admitted, hating the vulnerability in my voice. "I know, Mom, and I'm sorry," she said, glancing at her phone again. "It's just a crazy time with Jason's business taking off. He needs me too." As she left, promising to return soon, I had a sinking feeling that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. Little did I know just how right I was, or that I would be lying in the same hospital bed when I discovered exactly how much had changed. The digital clock on my hospital room wall read 2:17 a.m. when my phone lit up with Amanda's call. I had been drifting in and out of sleep, uncomfortable from the surgical pain and the relentless beeping of monitors. Thinking it might be an emergency, I answered immediately. "Mom." Amanda's voice was unusually high-pitched, almost giddy. The sound of music and voices in the background suggested she was at a party. "Amanda, is everything okay?" I shifted in bed, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. "Everything is amazing. I'm calling because—" She giggled, and I heard a male voice murmuring something I couldn't catch. "Jason and I just got engaged." Engaged. I was fully awake now. "But you've only been dating for—" "And that's not all," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "We've sold the apartment and car. We're leaving for Dubai next week. I know it's sudden, but when you know, right?" My mind raced to process what she was saying. "Sold the apartment. My apartment. Amanda," I said carefully. "What do you mean you sold the apartment?" "Oh, Mum, don't worry. It was a great offer, way above market value. I've already signed all the papers. The new owners move in this weekend." She sounded impatient, as if explaining something simple to a child. "Anyway, I'm calling to say goodbye because we'll be super busy with wedding plans and moving arrangements." I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm despite the bombshell she'd just dropped. "Okay, but you forgot one thing." There was a pause before she asked, "What do you mean?" I couldn't help but laugh out loud, because the absurdity of the situation suddenly struck me. "The apartment and car are legally mine, Amanda. You can't sell what you don't own." The music in the background seemed to fade as silence fell on her end of the line. When Amanda spoke again, her voice had lost its bubbly excitement. "What are you talking about? You gave them to me." "No, I let you live there and use the car. I never transferred ownership to you. The deed and title are both in my name." "Jason," I heard her call away from the phone. "Jason, come here." There was muffled conversation I couldn't make out. Then Jason's voice came on the line, smooth and condescending. Lillian Amanda seems confused. Perhaps you don't remember correctly due to your medication. You signed the ownership over to Amanda last year as a gift. I absolutely did not, I replied firmly. And any paperwork suggesting otherwise would be fraudulent. My heart monitor began beeping more rapidly as my pulse increased. A moment later, the night nurse Patty opened my door and gave me a questioning look. I held up one finger, asking for a minute. This is ridiculous. Amanda's voice was back now, angry rather than confused. You're just trying to control me like you always have. I'm finally happy and doing something for myself, and you can't stand it. Amanda, I've supported every dream you've ever had. But this isn't about dreams, it's about legal property. You cannot sell what isn't yours to sell. We already have buyers, she nearly shouted. The money is in escrow. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? I'm sorry about that, I said sincerely, but that's a problem you've created for yourself. I heard Jason in the background again, his tone sharper now. Tell her we'll fight this. Tell her we have documentation. Amanda's voice returned cold and threatening. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. Jason says we have a case for verbal agreement and established residence. You're going to regret this, Mom. The call ended abruptly. I stared at my phone in disbelief as Patty approached my bed. Everything all right? Your heart rate spiked, she said, checking my IV and the monitors. My daughter just tried to sell my apartment and car without my knowledge or permission. I explained, still processing the surreal conversation. Patty's eyebrows shot up. Well, that's a new one. Want me to call security police? I shook my head. Not yet, but I will need my phone charger and maybe something for anxiety. I don't think I'll be sleeping much tonight. Patty patted my hand sympathetically. Family troubles are the worst kind. I'll get you something mild to help you relax. After she left, I lay back against the pillows, my mind racing. How had things reached this point? Had I really been so blind to what was happening with Amanda? And how had she and Jason planned to pull off selling property that wasn't theirs? I scrolled through my contacts until I found Sandra Miller, my attorney and friend of 20 years. It was far too late to call her now, but I sent a text asking her to visit me in the hospital as soon as possible, emergency regarding Amanda and property fraud. Sleep was impossible after that. I replayed years of memories with Amanda, searching for the moment where our relationship had started to fracture. Had I indulged her too much? Not set enough boundaries? Or was this solely the influence of Jason, who had somehow managed to turn my loving daughter against me in less than a year? By morning, my surgical incision throbbed from the tension in my body. Doctor Hayes noticed my exhaustion immediately during his rounds. Rough night, he asked, checking my chart. You could say that. Family issues. He nodded knowingly. Those can sometimes be harder to recover from than surgery. Your body can't heal properly if you're under emotional distress. I know, I sighed. But this can't wait. My daughter is trying to sell my property fraudulently. Dr. Hayes frowned. That sounds like something that requires legal intervention. Just promise me you won't leave this bed until I clear you. Your infection is under control, but not fully resolved. I nodded, though I already knew I might have to break that promise depending on what Sandra advised when she arrived. At 9:30 a.m., Sandra walked in carrying a coffee tray and her briefcase. At 60, with steel-grey hair and perpetually skeptical eyes, she had been my rock through Michael's estate issues and numerous real estate legal matters over the years. You look terrible, she announced, handing me a cup. Hospital coffee is criminal, so I brought the good stuff. Now tell me what's so urgent. I recounted the midnight call and Amanda's shocking announcement. Sandra's expression grew increasingly grave as I explained about Jason's influence and the dramatic personality changes I'd observed in Amanda. This has classic signs of undue influence and potential fraud, she said when I finished. And unfortunately, I've seen this pattern before. Isolate someone from their support system, rush major life decisions, create financial entanglements, then leave the country before the consequences catch up. What do we do? Sandra opened her briefcase and removed a legal pad. First, I'll draft cease and desist letters to both Amanda and any real estate agencies or private buyers involved. Then we need to check if any documents have actually been filed with fraudulent signatures. I'll need your power of attorney to check these records. You have it, I said, reaching for a folder in my bedside drawer where I kept important documents. I always carried copies of critical papers, a habit from my real estate days. Smart woman, Sandra nodded approvingly. Next, we should consider filing a police report for attempted fraud. And I hate to ask this, but have you checked your credit report and accounts recently? If they're trying this with your property, they may have accessed other assets. A chill ran through me. I haven't looked in weeks with the surgery and everything. Sandra handed me her tablet. Let's check now. I logged into my banking app first, relieved to see no unusual activity in my main accounts. But when I opened the credit card statement for the card I had given Amanda for emergencies, I felt sick. There were charges for over $20,000 in the past month alone, luxury clothing stores, high-end restaurants, and most tellingly, a $14,000 charge to a jewelry store dated just 3 days ago. The engagement ring, I whispered. Evidence, Sandra corrected, taking notes. Now let's check your credit report. What we found there was even more disturbing. 3 credit inquiries from mortgage companies I'd never contacted, and a new line of credit opened in my name that I'd never applied for. Identity theft, Sandra said grimly, on top of attempted property fraud. How could she do this? My voice broke the emotional weight finally crashing down on me. Sandra set aside her legal pad and took my hand. Lillian, I've known Amanda since she was a child. This isn't her, at least not entirely. People like this Jason character are expert manipulators. They target kind, trusting people and slowly reshape their thinking until black becomes white. I've seen it destroy families before. What if she really loves him? I asked quietly. Then she can love him with her own assets, not yours, Sandra replied firmly. Right now, we need to protect you legally. I'll handle the cease and desist letters immediately and check the property records. Can you think of anyone else who might have information about their plans? I thought for a moment. Taylor Winter's Amanda's friend from college. They were inseparable before Jason, but I haven't heard Amanda mention her in months. Get me her contact information. And Lillian. Sandra's voice softened. Prepare yourself. This will likely get worse before it gets better. As Sandra left to begin legal proceedings, I lay back emotionally drained but resolute. Whatever happened next, I would face it head-on, not just for my own protection, but potentially to save my daughter from a man who seemed determined to isolate her from everyone who truly cared about her. Against medical advice, but with a reluctant discharge approved by Dr. Hayes, I left the hospital the following morning. Sandra insisted on driving me, lecturing the entire way about how I was pushing my recovery too hard. I knew she was right, but some things simply couldn't wait. The cease and desist letters have been sent by courier to Amanda Jason and 3 separate real estate agencies, Sandra explained as we drove toward the apartment. I've also placed alerts on the property with the county recorder's office. No legitimate sale can proceed now. What if they've already gotten someone to sign paperwork? I asked, clutching my purse where I kept all the property documents. Then those buyers have been defrauded too and will have legal recourse against Amanda and Jason, not you. But let's hope it hasn't gone that far. When we turned onto my apartment's street, my stomach dropped. A large moving truck was parked outside, and people were carrying furniture. My furniture out the front door. Stop the car, I said, already unbuckling my seatbelt despite the pain it caused my surgical wound. Lillian, wait, Sandra began, but I was already opening the door. I approached a man directing the movers, trying to keep my voice steady. Excuse me, what's going on here? The man consulted his clipboard. Moving service for Thompson. We're clearing the property for the new owners taking possession tomorrow. I'm Lillian Davis. I own this apartment and I haven't authorized any move or sale. The man frowned, then reached into his pocket and produced a folded document. Ma'am, I have a bill of sale signed by Amanda Davis Thompson, authorizing the removal and sale of all contents. I took the paper with trembling hands. There it was, my daughter's signature on an official-looking document, giving this company authority to empty my property. The furniture alone was worth thousands, not to mention the artwork and antiques I'd collected over decades. "This is fraudulent," I stated firmly. "Amanda Davis does not own this property or its contents. I'm calling the police." "Lady, I'm just doing my job based on signed paperwork," the man protested, as Sandra caught up to me, immediately taking the document from my hands to examine it. "As this woman's attorney, I'm informing you that you're participating in theft and fraud," Sandra told him firmly. "You need to stop this move immediately." "I can't do that without—" "Without what proof of ownership?" Sandra interrupted, pulling documents from her briefcase. "Here's the deed and property tax statements, all in Lillian Davis's name. Now shall we call the police, or will you stop your crew voluntarily?" The situation quickly escalated. The moving company supervisor called his office while Sandra called the police. Within 20 minutes, 2 police officers arrived, followed shortly by a red sports car that screeched to a halt behind them. Amanda and Jason emerged, both dressed as if heading to a business meeting, rather than dealing with a family crisis. "What have you done?" Amanda demanded, marching toward me with Jason close behind. Gone was any trace of my loving daughter. Her face was contorted with anger, her body language hostile. "What have I done? You tried to sell my property and possessions without my knowledge or consent," I replied, struggling to maintain composure. "Officers!" Jason stepped forward smoothly, addressing the police. "This is a family misunderstanding. Amanda's mother verbally gifted this apartment to her last year, but is now experiencing some health and possibly memory issues." He smiled sympathetically in my direction. "That's absolutely false," I stated. "I have all the legal documentation showing continuous ownership." The officers looked between us, clearly trying to sort out the conflicting stories. "This appears to be a civil matter," one finally said. "But until clear ownership is established, nothing should be removed from the premises." "We have buyers arriving tomorrow," Amanda protested. "We've already taken their money." That admission caught everyone's attention. The officer who had been taking notes looked up sharply. "You've accepted payment for property without clear title." Jason placed his hand on Amanda's arm, squeezing visibly. "What my fiancé means is that we have a deposit in escrow contingent on clean title transfer, which we fully expected to receive from her mother as previously agreed." While the officers continued questioning Jason and Amanda, Sandra pulled me aside. "This is worse than I thought. They're not just trying to sell the apartment, they've been systematically selling off your possessions." She showed me her phone screen open to an online marketplace account under A. Thompson. Listed were dozens of items I recognized from the apartment, my grandmother's china cabinet artwork I'd collected during travels. Even small items like the vintage jewelry box Michael had given me on our first anniversary. "They've been doing this for weeks," Sandra murmured. "The reviews and sale dates go back at least a month." I felt physically ill, leaning against the building for support. One of the neighbors, Mrs. Castillo, approached hesitantly from the adjacent unit. "Ms. Davis, I thought you were—" She paused awkwardly. "You thought I was what, Mrs. Castillo?" The elderly woman looked confused. "Well, your daughter told everyone in the building that you had passed away suddenly. There was even a small memorial gathering in the apartment last week. That's why no one questioned the moving trucks or the property showings." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Amanda had told people I was dead. I looked across the lawn where she stood arguing with the police officers, this stranger who wore my daughter's face but whose actions I couldn't recognize. Sandra gripped my elbow as I swayed slightly. "Lillian, you need to sit down. You're still recovering from surgery." More neighbors had emerged from surrounding units drawn by the police presence and moving truck commotion. Several approached me with confused expressions, saying they'd been told of my passing. Each confirmation was another knife to my heart. Meanwhile, Sandra had been quietly documenting everything with her phone camera and taking statements from neighbors. She pulled up my credit monitoring app again, showing me additional discoveries. "They've taken out loans using your identity," she said grimly. 2 personal loans totaling $50,000 in the past month, using your social security number. and an address I don't recognize. The scope of the betrayal was overwhelming. This wasn't just about the apartment or car. It was a calculated, extensive plan to exploit everything I owned before disappearing overseas. The confrontation continued for another hour. The police finally instructed the moving company to return any removed items, advised all parties to maintain status quo until legal ownership was established, and took information for a potential fraud investigation. As they prepared to leave, I found myself face to face with Amanda. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed uncertainty in her eyes, a flicker of the daughter I'd raised. But then Jason appeared at her side, whispering something in her ear, and her expression hardened again. "This isn't over," she said coldly. "You've embarrassed us in front of everyone." "Amanda," I said quietly, "please think about what you're doing. This isn't you." "You don't know me at all," she snapped. "You never have." They left without another word, the sports car's engine revving aggressively as they pulled away. I stood watching until they disappeared from view, only vaguely aware of Sandra speaking to the remaining officer, or the sympathetic murmurs from neighbors. The stress, physical exertion, and emotional trauma suddenly caught up with me, and the world tilted sideways as my legs gave way. The last thing I heard before consciousness faded was Sandra calling my name and someone shouting for an ambulance. Then darkness enveloped me, a brief respite from the nightmare my life had become. "Your blood pressure bottomed out," Dr. Hayes explained when I woke up back in my hospital room. "Between the surgical recovery infection and what I gather was significant emotional distress, your body simply couldn't cope." I turned my head to see Sandra sitting in the visitor's chair, her laptop open and phone to her ear. She gave me a thumbs up while continuing her conversation in legal terminology too complex for my foggy brain to follow. "How long have I been here?" I asked, noticing it was dark outside. "About 8 hours. We had to give you some medication to help you rest." Dr. Hayes checked my vitals and nodded with satisfaction. "Better. But Lillian, I cannot stress enough how critical it is that you avoid stress and physical exertion right now. Whatever is happening with your daughter can wait." But it couldn't wait, and we both knew it. As soon as the doctor left, Sandra ended her call and moved her chair closer. "You frightened me," she admonished. "But while you've been resting, I've been busy. The police are taking the fraud attempt seriously now, especially after confirming with several neighbors that Amanda and Jason claimed you were deceased." "I still can't believe she would do this," I whispered, tears forming despite my best efforts. "Where did I go wrong, Sandra? How did I raise someone capable of this?" Sandra took my hand firmly. "Stop that right now. The Amanda we've known her entire life wouldn't do this. Something else is happening here." A knock at the door interrupted us. A nurse entered, followed by a young woman with copper hair pulled into a messy bun, Taylor Winters, Amanda's oldest friend. "Ms. Davis." Taylor rushed to my bedside, her eyes wide with concern. "I came as soon as Sandra called me. I've been so worried about Amanda, but I had no idea things had gotten this bad." "Taylor." I managed a weak smile. "Thank you for coming. When was the last time you spoke with Amanda?" Taylor perched on the edge of the visitor's chair Sandra had vacated. "About 2 months ago, and it wasn't pleasant. She accused me of being jealous of her relationship with Jason and said I was trying to sabotage her happiness. I've known Amanda since freshman year of college. I was her maid of honor when she thought she was getting married to Brian 3 years ago, for goodness sake. I just wanted her to slow down and think." "Brian," Sandra interjected. "I thought that was just a serious boyfriend." "They were engaged briefly," I explained. "Amanda broke it off, saying she wasn't ready for marriage yet. That was only 2 years ago. She was firmly against rushing into marriage then." Taylor nodded. "That's what I reminded her of when she started talking about marrying Jason after just a few months of dating. But she completely shut me down." She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "I probably should have shown these to someone sooner, but it felt like betraying her confidence." She handed me her phone open to a text conversation with Amanda. I scrolled through messages that grew increasingly concerning Amanda. Jason says I need to focus on people who support our future. You're just holding me back with your negativity. Taylor. It's not negativity to suggest you take time to know someone before uprooting your entire life. This isn't like you, Amanda. Amanda. Jason says that's exactly what people say when they're jealous. He's shown me how many people have been using me, including my mother. Taylor. Using you. Your mum has supported you in every possible way, Amanda. That's what she wants everyone to think. Jason helped me see how she's actually been controlling me through financial manipulation. The texts continued, each one more alarming than the last. Amanda described how Jason had opened her eyes to how everyone in her life had ulterior motives, how her mother's generosity was actually a form of control, how her friends were jealous of her relationship and new lifestyle. These are classic manipulation tactics, Sandra said, reading over my shoulder. Isolation from support networks, creating an us against the world mentality, reframing past positive relationships as negative. There's more, Taylor said quietly, taking back her phone and opening another app. I did some digging after Amanda cut me off. Jason Thompson isn't even his real name, it's Jason Thornfield. He has a history of fraud charges in at least 3 states. He targets women with assets or women whose families have assets. She showed us news articles and court records she'd compiled, detailing Jason's pattern of romantic relationships that ended in financial exploitation. Most disturbing were the similarities. Each woman had become estranged from family and friends. During the relationship, each had been rushed into major life decisions, and in 2 cases, they had moved internationally before the fraud was discovered. Have you shown this to Amanda? I asked. Taylor looked down, her expression pained. I tried. She blocked my number after I sent the first link. That was 6 weeks ago. A hospital psychologist visited later that evening at Sandra's request. Dr. Melinda Warner specialized in family estrangement and financial abuse of elders. What you're describing fits a pattern we unfortunately see quite often, she explained after hearing our story. A charismatic individual systematically isolates their target from support systems, creates dependency, and rewrites the target's understanding of their past relationships. But Amanda is intelligent and independent, I protested. She has a college degree, a good job, or did before all this started. Intelligence offers no protection against this type of manipulation, Dr. Warner explained gently. In fact, intelligent people can sometimes be more vulnerable because they believe they're too smart to be manipulated. The process is gradual, with the manipulator creating constant doubt, then offering themselves as the only reliable source of truth and support. How do we help her? I asked the question that had been haunting me since that midnight call. Dr. Warner's expression was sympathetic but realistic. Unfortunately, confrontation rarely works. The manipulator has already framed you as the enemy, so anything you say will be filtered through that lens. Sometimes a crisis forces recognition when the manipulator's mask slips dramatically or their claims are irrefutably proven false. Like discovering the property sales are fraudulent, Sandra suggested. Possibly, but be prepared for her to blame you even for that, the doctor warned. In her current mindset, any obstacle will be framed as your attempt to control her, not as a consequence of their illegal actions. After Dr. Warner left, Sandra helped me process everything we'd learned. My emotions swung wildly between heartbreak, anger, and determination to save my daughter from what was clearly a dangerous situation. I need to protect myself legally, I acknowledged, but I also need to find a way to reach Amanda before she's taken even further from me. One step at a time, Sandra advised. First, we secure your assets and identity. Then we address the fraudulent sales attempts. The criminal investigation may actually help Amanda see the truth if she's confronted with irrefutable evidence of Jason's past. I nodded, physically exhausted, but mentally resolute. The daughter I'd raised, loving, ethical, kind, was still in there somewhere beneath Jason's influence. I had to believe that. And I had to find a way to reach her, even as I protected myself from further exploitation. As Taylor prepared to leave, she hugged me gently, mindful of my surgical incision. "I miss my friend," she said softly. "The real Amanda. I'll do whatever I can to help bring her back." In that moment of shared grief and determination, I felt the first real hope since that midnight call. I wasn't alone in this fight for my property, my identity, and most importantly for my daughter's freedom from whatever spell Jason had cast over her. The next few weeks unfolded like a bizarre legal thriller. I recovered at home with the help of friends who took shifts staying with me partly for my health needs, and partly because Sandra insisted I not be alone in case Amanda and Jason attempted anything further. The cease and desist letters had immediate effects. 2 real estate agencies contacted my attorney to explain they'd been approached by Amanda about listing my property, but no formal agreements had been signed. The third, however, had proceeded based on documents they now realized were problematic. They were cooperating fully with the investigation to avoid liability. More concerning was the buyer, a couple who had put down a substantial deposit, signed paperwork, and arranged to move in just days after our confrontation at the apartment. They were understandably distraught and were pursuing their own legal action against Amanda and Jason for fraud. "This is actually helpful for us," Sandra explained during one of our daily strategy sessions. "The more people filing complaints, the stronger the criminal case becomes." Every day brought new discoveries of the extent of Amanda and Jason's actions. Credit cards opened in my name, loan applications, even attempts to access my investment accounts thankfully thwarted by security questions they couldn't answer. Amanda's response to the legal pushback was to escalate her campaign against me. One morning I woke to several concerned messages from friends and former colleagues asking if I was okay. Confused, I checked social media to find Amanda had created a lengthy post describing me as a controlling, abusive mother who had threatened to make her homeless for finding happiness. "My mother has always used money to control me," she wrote. "Now that I'm finally independent and building a life with someone she doesn't approve of, she's trying to punish me by claiming I'm stealing from her. The reality is she promised me this property repeatedly and is now vindictively taking it back." The post included childhood photos selectively chosen and captioned to support her narrative, me looking stern, while Amanda cried, admitting that it was after she'd run into traffic, and I'd just experienced the worst fright of my life. Me absent from a school play when I'd been in the hospital with pneumonia. Each image twisted to create a story that bore no resemblance to our actual relationship. "Don't respond publicly," Sandra advised firmly when I called her in tears. "That's exactly what they want, to draw you into a public dispute that muddies the legal waters. We'll let the courts speak for us." "But people I've known for decades are questioning my character," I protested. "Amanda has convinced mutual friends that I'm this monster they've never seen before." "Those who truly know you won't be swayed," Sandra replied. "And right now, your energy needs to be focused on legal protection and recovery, not public opinion." She was right, of course, but the social isolation was nearly as painful as Amanda's betrayal. Some longtime friends seemed to suddenly remember odd incidents they could reinterpret through Amanda's new narrative. Others simply didn't want to be involved in such a messy situation. The few who stood firmly by me became my lifeline, especially Martha, from my real estate office, and my neighbor Gerald, who had known Amanda since she was a teenager and categorically rejected her revisionist history. 3 weeks after the initial confrontation, a certified letter arrived. Inside was an elaborate invitation to Amanda and Jason's wedding, scheduled for just 2 weeks later at a small venue outside the city. A handwritten note was paperclipped to the invitation. "Mom, I'm extending this invitation as a final opportunity for you to accept my happiness and apologize for your actions. Jason believes in family healing and has convinced me to offer this olive branch. The choice is yours. Support us and repair our relationship, or continue your vendetta and lose me forever. Amanda." I stared at the flowing script, trying to find my daughter in these manipulative words. The Amanda I knew would never issue such an ultimatum, would never frame basic legal protection against fraud as a vendetta. Sandra examined the invitation when she arrived later that day. This is actually quite revealing, she noted. They're rushing the wedding even though their Dubai plans are currently thwarted. I suspect they're planning to try another exit strategy soon. Should I go? I asked. The question had been tormenting me since the invitation arrived. Sandra considered carefully before answering. From a legal perspective, I'd advise against it. But from a human perspective, she sighed. This might be your last opportunity to reach Amanda before things get even more complicated. The next day brought news that strengthened this perspective. The private investigator Sandra had hired delivered a comprehensive report on Jason Thornfield, and it was even worse than Taylor's initial research had suggested. Beyond his fraud charges were allegations of domestic violence that had been dropped when the victims refused to testify. Most alarming was a pattern of isolating women from their families, exploiting their assets, and then disappearing, sometimes leaving them with significant debt and legal problems. He's not just a con man, Sandra said grimly after reviewing the report. He's dangerous, and he's accelerating his timeline with Amanda. The investigator had also uncovered a recent purchase of one-way tickets to Bali, not Dubai, scheduled for the day after the wedding. They hadn't given up their plan to leave the country, they'd simply changed destinations after the initial confrontation. They're going to take whatever they can liquidate quickly and run, Sandra concluded. The wedding is just cover for their departure. Then I have to go, I decided. Not just for the legal aspects, but because it may be my last chance to reach Amanda before he takes her somewhere I can't follow. Over the next week, we prepared meticulously. Sandra compiled all the evidence of fraud and Jason's criminal history into a concise file. We arranged for 2 police officers who had been investigating the fraud case to be available on call. Taylor agreed to attend as my support person, using her past friendship with Amanda as justification for her presence. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect weather that felt mockingly at odds with the gravity of what we were about to do. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit that projected calm authority rather than maternal sentimentality. The mother of the bride typically looks emotional and festive. I needed to look credible and grounded. Remember, Sandra coached as we drove to the venue, your primary goal is to create a moment of clarity for Amanda. She needs to see Jason's true nature, not hear accusations from you. If he feels cornered, he may reveal himself in ways that even she can't rationalize away. The small garden venue had been decorated with white roses and twinkling lights, objectively beautiful, but knowing it was built on fraud and manipulation made it all seem grotesque. About 40 guests milled around, many looking confused, likely friends, who had been told various stories about why the wedding was so rushed. Amanda stood near a rose-covered archway, in a simple white dress, her hair styled elegantly. For a moment, seeing her as the beautiful young woman I'd raised my resolve faltered. Then I noticed Jason's possessive hand at the small of her back, the way her eyes darted to him for approval after each conversation, and my determination returned. She saw me approaching, and her expression froze. Jason noticed her reaction and turned his charming smile, faltering for just a second, before returning at full wattage. "Lillian," he greeted smoothly. "What a surprise. Amanda wasn't sure you'd accept her olive branch." "I would never miss my only daughter's wedding," I replied calmly. "Though I am surprised at the rush. 2 weeks' notice is quite unusual." "When you know," Jason said with practiced sincerity, his arm tightening around Amanda's waist. "Isn't that right, darling?" Amanda nodded, though I noted she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "I'm surprised you came after everything you've done," she said, her voice lacking conviction. "Everything I've done." I kept my tone even. "Amanda, I'd like to speak with you privately for a moment." "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Jason," she replied automatically, as if reciting a line. "Actually," Taylor appeared beside me, "I think what your mum needs to discuss should be private, Amanda. Old friend to old friend, give her 10 minutes. Amanda looked startled at Taylor's appearance. "You're not welcome here," she said, but her voice wavered. "You've chosen sides against me." "There are no sides," I said gently. "There's only the truth, and those who want to hide it from you." Jason's demeanor shifted slightly, a hardness entering his eyes. I think you both need to leave. You're upsetting Amanda on her wedding day. I noticed several guests watching our interaction with interest, including Amanda's godfather, Robert, who had known her since birth. I caught his eye and he moved closer, clearly concerned about the tension he was witnessing. Before we go anywhere, I said, removing a folder from my purse, I think there are some things Amanda needs to see. We're not interested in your attempts to sabotage our happiness, Jason said sharply. Amanda knows all your tricks. These aren't tricks, I replied, opening the folder. These are court records, Jason. Or should I say Jason Thornfield? That is your legal name, correct? His face darkened. I changed my name years ago for personal reasons. Amanda knows all about it. I turned to my daughter. Did you know about the fraud convictions in Arizona? Or the domestic violence charges in Nevada? Did you know about Melissa Andrews, who lost her home after signing it over to Jason before he disappeared with the proceeds? Amanda's face paled. He explained all that. Those women lied about him because he ended their relationships. All of them. All 7 women with remarkably similar stories spanning 5 states over 8 years. I kept my voice gentle, speaking to Amanda as if Jason weren't there. Honey, look at the pattern. Don't call me that, she snapped, but I could see uncertainty flickering in her eyes. You're just trying to control me like you always have. Amanda. Robert stepped forward. I've known you since you were born. Your mother has never been controlling. She's been the most supportive parent I've ever seen. You don't know what she's like in private, Amanda insisted, but with less conviction. I continued as if she hadn't spoken, keeping my focus entirely on connecting with her. Did you know about the tickets to Bali for tomorrow? Not Dubai, where you told everyone you were going, but Bali. This clearly caught Amanda by surprise. Her head turned sharply to Jason. What is she talking about? Jason's mask slipped for an instant, annoyance flashing across his features before the smooth facade returned. It was meant to be a surprise, darling. A honeymoon before we settle in Dubai. Then why are they one-way tickets? I asked, showing the printout the investigator had obtained. Enough. Jason's voice rose, drawing more attention from the gathering guests. This is pathetic, Lillian. You can't stand that Amanda is happy without your puppet strings. You'd fabricate anything to maintain control. I haven't fabricated the credit card fraud, I replied evenly, or the identity theft, or the apartment fraud. The police are investigating all of it, Jason. They're actually on standby right now. Jason took a step toward me, his face contorting with anger. You vindictive bitch! You'll regret this interference. And there it was, the mask finally slipping completely. In his rage, he had forgotten his audience, forgotten the role he was playing. Amanda's eyes widened as she witnessed this side of him for the first time in such a public setting. Jason, she said quietly, don't speak to my mother that way. He rounded on her. Are you serious right now? After everything I've done for you, everything we've planned, you're going to take her side? Amanda took a small step back, confusion evident on her face. I'm not taking sides. I just don't understand why you're so angry if there's nothing to hide. It was the first independent thought I'd heard from my daughter in months, the first time she'd questioned him directly. I held my breath, watching their interaction without interfering. There's nothing to hide, Jason insisted, visibly trying to regain composure. I'm angry because your mother is trying to ruin our wedding day with recycled accusations. Then explain the tickets, Amanda pressed, showing more backbone than I'd seen recently. Why one way? Why Bali when you told me Dubai? It's complicated, he hedged. Business opportunities have shifted. I was going to explain after the ceremony. Robert moved protectively closer to Amanda. Taylor had quietly positioned herself on Amanda's other side. I could see Jason noticing this subtle shift in alliances, the way the crowd's sympathy was moving away from him. Maybe we should postpone the ceremony, Amanda suggested, her voice strengthening. Just until we sort this out. Jason's expression darkened further. There's nothing to sort out. Either you trust me or you don't, Amanda. Either we get married today as planned, or we don't get married at all. It was the wrong move and ultimatum that only highlighted the control dynamics I'd been trying to show Amanda for months. She flinched visibly, then straightened her shoulders. Then I guess we don't get married at all, she said quietly. I need answers, Jason. Real ones. I watched as years of my daughter's confidence and independence qualities I'd nurtured since she was small finally reasserted themselves. Jason saw it too, and his strategy shifted instantly to one I recognized from the investigator's report on his past relationships. Dramatic abandonment designed to make the woman come crawling back. Fine, he snapped. Crawl back to mommy. You're pathetic, Amanda. I was doing you a favor by seeing potential in you. He yanked his boutonniere off and threw it to the ground. You'll regret this. All of you will. As he stormed toward the exit, 2 police officers who had been waiting discreetly approached him. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the stiffening of Jason's posture told me enough they weren't letting him leave the premises just yet. Amanda stood frozen, watching the man she'd planned to marry transform before her eyes into someone unrecognizable. Then very slowly, she turned to face me. The confusion and pain in her expression broke my heart all over again. Mum, she said, her voice small and uncertain like when she was a child waking from a nightmare. What's happening? I opened my arms, and for the first time in over a year, my daughter stepped into my embrace. As she began to sob against my shoulder, I held her gently, mindful that the road ahead would be long and difficult. But for this moment, I had my Amanda back, and that was enough to begin healing. The days following the wedding that wasn't were among the most difficult of our lives. Amanda oscillated between crushing guilt, defensive anger, and profound confusion as the reality of what had happened slowly crystallized. We had returned to my home rather than the apartment, which was now a crime scene, as police investigated the extent of the fraud. I don't understand how I couldn't see it, Amanda said on the 3rd morning, sitting at my kitchen counter, with untouched toast before her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from another sleepless night. How could I have believed those things about you, about everyone who loves me? I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder as I set down a fresh cup of tea. It didn't happen overnight, honey. It was gradual, small suggestions that built into a completely different reality. But the things I said to you, the things I posted online. She covered her face with her hands. I accused you of abuse, Mum. I told people you were manipulative and controlling. How can you even look at me now? This was the conversation we'd had repeatedly since the wedding day, each time approaching it from slightly different angles, as Amanda processed what had happened to her. I look at you and see my daughter who was manipulated by someone who has done this before to many women, I explained patiently. The police investigations are showing just how calculated Jason's approach was. Indeed, as the legal process unfolded, the picture became increasingly clear. Jason had a system that he had refined over years. He targeted women with assets or access to family wealth, love-bombed them with intense affection and validation, then gradually isolated them while reshaping their understanding of previous relationships. The final stage was always a rushed major commitment, followed by liquidating whatever assets could be quickly converted to cash before disappearing. I thought I was too smart for something like this, Amanda whispered. Intelligence doesn't protect anyone from this kind of manipulation. I reminded her, echoing what Dr. Warner had explained. In fact, Jason specifically targets intelligent, capable women because they often have more resources and because they believe they couldn't possibly be victims. Amanda had begun seeing Dr. Warner twice weekly, slowly unpacking the layers of manipulation and rebuilding her sense of self. The process was painful but necessary, especially as she faced the legal consequences of actions taken under Jason's influence. The district attorney is sympathetic to your situation, Sandra explained during a meeting with both of us. The pattern of behavior is consistent with Jason's previous cases. They're primarily interested in his prosecution, but you'll still need to make restitution for the fraud committed in your name. Amanda nodded soberly. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm just grateful the buyers didn't lose their money permanently. The legal fallout was extensive. Jason was facing multiple felony charges for fraud identity theft and attempting to sell property he didn't own. He remained in custody, unable to make the substantial bail set by the judge who had recognized him as a flight risk. Amanda had to address the fraudulent social media claims she'd made about me, which she did with a lengthy, heartfelt post, explaining how she had been manipulated and apologizing for the pain she had caused. Some relationships were permanently damaged. Not everyone could understand or forgive what had happened. But many friends rallied around her, especially Taylor, who never said, "I told you so," but simply showed up consistently to help Amanda rebuild. 6 months after the wedding day confrontation, Amanda and I sat in my garden on a warm afternoon. She had moved into a small apartment of her own, insisted on a payment plan to reimburse me for the credit card fraud, and had returned to her marketing career with renewed focus. "I need to say something," she said, setting down her iced tea with determination. "I've been working on this in therapy, and Dr. Warner said it's important that I articulate it clearly." I nodded, giving her my full attention. "Mum, I am deeply, truly sorry for everything that happened. Not just the financial stuff, but the horrible things I said about you, the way I treated you, the pain I caused." Her voice was steady, her eyes meeting mine directly. "I know sorry doesn't undo any of it. But I want you to know that I take full responsibility for my actions regardless of the manipulation. I made choices. They were influenced choices, but still mine. And I will spend however long it takes rebuilding your trust and making amends." Tears filled my eyes at the maturity and sincerity in her words. "Thank you, Amanda. That means everything to me." "I also want to thank you," she continued. "You could have given up on me. Many parents would have. But you fought for me even when I was hurting you terribly. You saw me, the real me, even when I couldn't see myself." I reached across the table and took her hand. That's what unconditional love is. Not without boundaries. I still needed to protect myself legally, but without conditions on the love itself. A year after the fateful midnight call, our lives had found a new normal. I had undergone a follow-up surgery to address complications from the rushed recovery during the crisis. Amanda had taken time off work to care for me. Our roles temporarily reversed as she brought me meals, managed my medications, and kept me company during recovery. "How are you feeling about the sentencing next week?" I asked one evening, as she helped me with physical therapy exercises. Jason had been convicted on multiple counts and would finally be sentenced. Amanda had provided key testimony that had strengthened the case against him. "Nervous," she admitted, "but ready. Dr. Warner says facing him from a position of strength is important for my healing. You don't have to do it alone. I'll be right beside you." She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, something that had taken months to return. "I know, Mum. You always are." The journey had been painful beyond words, but it had also brought unexpected gifts. Amanda and I had developed a more authentic relationship, one based not just on the easy closeness we'd always shared, but on a deeper understanding of human vulnerability and the work required to maintain healthy connections. Amanda had also found purpose in her experience volunteering with an organization that supported victims of coercive control and financial abuse. Her marketing skills proved valuable in helping raise awareness about the warning signs she had missed in her own relationship. As for me, I had learned that love sometimes means fighting for someone, even when they've hurt you deeply, not without boundaries, but with unwavering belief in who they truly are, beneath the layers of manipulation. I had also learned the importance of self-protection, of trusting my instincts about people like Jason, and of surrounding myself with friends like Sandra, who stood by me during the darkest times. The midnight call that had started our ordeal had seemed like the end of our relationship, but instead, it had become the beginning of a more authentic one, harder earned, more conscious, and ultimately stronger than before. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love after a painful betrayal? How did you find the balance between forgiveness and protecting yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of healing and resilience. Remember, sometimes our most painful experiences become our greatest teachers. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find strength and wisdom in your own life's challenges.